Good evening. Welcome to our study tonight. Tonight is a really deep study, so I hope you save some brain cells for today, because later on when we get into it, it's pretty heavy. First off, let's talk about in the news what's going on. Obviously, there's a lot going on, and of course, our focus is right now on Israel. I'm not sure why this is not advancing, but it's on Israel, and so I wanted to bring you that one first. Let's talk about the Iran's attack on Israel was a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. I'm going to have a little technical difficulty here, but let me read this one to you. Iran fired more than, and you already know this, Iran fired more than 200 drones and missiles at Israel, although an estimated 39% of them were intercepted thanks to Israel's air defense, which was the Iron Dome and David's Sling and the Arrow. 39 cruise missiles, 39 hypersonic missiles. We might be, and I'm going to just be cautious with this, we might be on the verge of the Gog-Magog war that Ezekiel described in chapter 38 and 39. The attack was prophetically significant, obviously. The nation Israel being attacked by Iran is unprecedented and is a real game changer, as I think you know a little bit from the news, but they're really downplaying quite a bit. It's out of the cycle right now, so they're only giving you bits and pieces. But what happens next is the big question. I look at these events unfolding before us in the light of Bible prophecy, which we have to. Iran changed their name from Persia in 1935. That's important. I'll show you that in a moment. Not only will the Jews be regathered together in the homeland, but they will be increasingly isolated, prophecy says. That's happening right now. The Bible also predicted the rise of the anti-Semitism in the end times. That's happening. The Bible also predicts a large nation to the north of Israel, identified in Ezekiel as Magog, Gog being the leader, and Persia, which we know is Iran, attacking her. That hasn't totally happened yet with both of them, although they're very much in agreement with each other. Iran and Russia are, for the most part, allies. Let me show you the map and show you what's going on. So this is the Gog-Magog war, what it's called. It's Iran, which is Persia, and we know that Russia, Magog comes down. That's another indication in this chart of all the other countries that will be involved in it. So we're watching this thing play out right in front of us, and unfortunately we're not seeing a lot about it. As I go on to the news of Israel and the war, I'm going to give you some real prophetic insight in a moment. Persia or Iran attacking Israel is predicted in the Bible, and guess what? That just happened right now. Now, am I suggesting what we just took place is going to lead to the scenario of Ezekiel 38? Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it certainly is a cause for us to sit up and pay attention. Is it in the best interest for the United States of America to stand with our loyal ally? Of course it is, the nation of Israel, but we're not doing that. The Bible says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And basically, one of the reasons God has blessed the United States is because we stood by our friend Israel, and I hope we continue to do so. I'm sorry about the excessive noise that's coming in. Hopefully it'll stop soon. So we're seeing this tentative thing going on where we're supporting Israel, we're not supporting Israel, and it's a vacillating thing that Biden's doing. He's doing it for political reasons. Everything he does is for political reasons, and that's extremely dangerous, especially concerning Israel. Which brings me to another article, which is the Middle East update. So what is next? Well, President Biden reportedly told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he should, you ready, refrain from ordering a retaliatory strike on the Islamist regime. Those calls were echoed by America's European allies and others in the region. The international community firmly believes that the best thing for Israel to do is to exercise restraint. That's ridiculous, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But the notion that Israeli security is best served by doing nothing, or as little as possible, after Washington's advice whenever Israel is attacked, is not as reasonable as both Biden's apologists and Netanyahu's critics seem to think. Biden's weakness and the clear evidence of the growing distance between Israel and the United States encouraged Iran and its allies to believe that attacks on the Jewish state, whether it's Hamas cross-border attacks of October 7th or the weekend missile launches, would not merely be tolerated but also further expose Washington's fecklessness. Biden's attempt to revive former President Barack Obama's misguided diplomatic efforts to effect a rapprochement with Iran has, like the disastrous 2015 nuclear deal, enriched and empowered Iran. All we're doing is we're enriching Iran and empowering them. Where do you think they got the billions of dollars for all of their missiles, sophisticated missiles, some of them, because we gave them money, gave them billions of dollars. So where did they put it? Not into their infrastructure, not into their people, but into their military because they're hell-bent on destroying Israel. Iran is engaged in a pattern of consistency in aggressive behavior, constantly. It's not true that Iran hoped they would fail. Somebody said, I heard the other day on the news, that Iran did this and they hoped it would fail. No, they didn't. They wanted to kill as many people as they possibly could. Iran remains the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and as such, aims to intimidate and kill its opponents. The Israelis, the Jews around the world, Americans, Europeans, and some Arabs. And so Iran is that rogue nation. Playing up to her is not going to help us. It's a mistake to think that Israel gains anything by allowing itself to play the victim or the role of the pliant American client. Israelis are grateful sounds like a bomb's going off in my front yard. Israelis are grateful for the help that they received from the United States and other nations in defeating the Iranian attacks. However, the foreign assistance they got was not an act of philanthropy. Successful Iranian strikes on Israel endanger the entire region and the entire world. It's necessary to finally put Iran in check. They must be deterred from ever being able to do this again. If they could do it and get away with it, they're going to continue to do it. Oblivious is that American calls for restraint have far more to do with Biden's political interests than U.S. security. What Biden's really trying to do is appeal to his left wing, to the Muslims who he feels in Dearborn, Michigan, and the rest of Michigan, who he feels if he loses them, he's going to lose the election. That's the only reason he's going against Israel. It's all about the election, just like the problem with the border. It's all about votes. And so it has nothing to do with us. He's a danger to our national security. This man is a disgrace to all Americans. He's a hireling, he's a liar, he's unable to defend Israel, and he's unable to defend America. But Biden is, as he has done since taking office, continuing to send mixed messages that have only encouraged Iranian adventurism in the region. Israel should do what it needs to do in its own way and at a time of its own choosing to make Iran back down. But the more we hear talk of American pressure for Jerusalem to exercise restraint, the more certain it is that the long-term result will only be more bloodshed and Iranian-backed terror. Let's continue to go in that vein and tell you a little bit more. Will Israel target Iranian oil infrastructure? Gas prices are already on the rise, and that is quite a possibility. If Israel retaliates, they're going to take out the drone plants. I know they're going to do that. They're going to take out some of the strategic areas militarily, because that's what Israel does. And they may take out some of their oil fields, because Iran's also getting a tremendous amount of income from their oil. This was all shut down by President Trump, excuse me. But illegally, they're selling oil to China right now, and China loves it because they're padding the pockets of Iran. So listen to this article. Can you imagine paying $7 a gallon for gasoline? It could happen very soon, because it appears that Israel is about to strike Iran, and that's likely to cause events in the Middle East to spiral completely out of control. Right now, approximately 1/5 of all the oil used in the world goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, you may not know about that strait, maybe you've heard of it, but I'm going to show you how strategic it is in a moment. So an apocalyptic war in the region could potentially close the Strait of Hormuz until the conflict is resolved one way or the other. Let me show you how narrow that spot is. That's the Strait of Hormuz. 1/5 of all the world's oil comes through there. If that is closed, you and I will have some problems. America will have problems. The world will have problems. A satellite image of it is there. It's very, very narrow. And massive oil tankers go through that every single day. Many, many of them. Our way of life depends on cheap oil. And so if a major regional war in the Middle East causes the price of oil to go skyrocketing, that's going to deeply affect all of us. On Monday, the average price of a gallon of gasoline in the United States was $3.63. So it estimates that a spike in oil prices would push U.S. gasoline to $5.40 a gallon this summer, would make make us have a recession later in 2024, and it's definitely a possibility. Also, there are experts that are warning that if the price of oil reaches $125 a barrel, it could push the United States economy into recession. When pump prices increase quickly, consumers must cut back on other spending, obviously. If Israel and Iran start lobbing thousands of missiles at one another, we could easily see the price of oil surpass $150 a barrel. And it's likely that the average price of gasoline in the United States would shoot well past $7 a gallon. And if nuclear weapons are used, then yes, they're thinking about it in the Middle East. There is no telling what might happen. Right now, the financial markets are waiting to see if Israel chooses to retaliate. At this moment, it is being reported that Israel is preparing to retaliate. When that occurs, the price of oil will, right now, as soon as they do it, it'll go nuts. And people all over the United States will blame Israel for the high price of gasoline. No doubt, Biden will also. But instead, they should blame Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. If they would just have left Israel alone, things could have turned out much differently than they are now. Iran could have lived in peace. The Iranians are one of the largest producers of oil in the world. And during the Biden administration, they've been able to dramatically increase their oil exports. Iran has steeply raised oil exports, its main source of revenue, during the Biden administration, after they were severely reduced to the measures taken by the Trump administration. Instead of using their oil money to fund terror organizations, which they do all over the area, the Houthis and the Hamas and Hezbollah, the Iranians could have lived in luxury. To be honest, Iran could have been one of the most prosperous and richest countries in the entire world. But instead, they have foolishly chosen a much different path. The question is why? Well, I'm going to tell you why, and you're not going to hear it on local news. You won't hear it on national news. You won't hear it on Fox. You won't hear it on CNN. You'll never hear it in our media. I'm going to tell you why Iran is bent on destroying Israel and creating a world war. Because remember, they think America is the great Satan and Israel is the little Satan. Here's the reason why. Iran, the Shiite Muslims, believe that their hidden Mahdi, their Messiah, is going to come back only to put down a world war. And when he does that, he's going to make the entire rest of the population of the world Muslim. So think about it. They have a religious mindset. They know they're not going to win a regional war. They know they're not going to do that. They have every knowledge that they could be wiped out. That's not what their main focus is. Nobody's telling us this. Let me give it to you right from a Muslim scholar. Many Muslims anticipate that the end of days is here, or will be here soon. In 2012, a Pew poll in most of the countries surveyed in the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, half or more Muslims believe they will personally witness the appearance of the hidden Mahdi. In Islamic eschatology, end times, the messianic figure known as the Mahdi, the guided one, will appear before the day of judgment at the last great war of planet Earth. So they know that he's coming when they have a great war of planet Earth. Why do you think they want to start a war? They want their Messiah coming. If Christians believe that Jesus would come back because we started a war, I promise you, maybe not Christians, but some other religious group would start that war. That's what they want to do. This expectation is most common in Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Tunisia, Malaysia, and many parts of Africa. For most Shiites, the Mahdi has already been born and is now hidden. And when he reveals himself, justice, they believe, will prevail. The 1979 Iranian Revolution is considered by some Shiites to be an early sign of the Mahdi's appearance. For both Sunnis and Shiites, the Mahdi's role is, in part, to end the disunity of the Muslim community, bring the Shiites and the Sunnis together, and to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. You heard me right, they call him Isa. They're preparing. They think this war is going to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ, but not the Jesus Christ that you and I know, who is understood by Islam to be a prophet in Islam, who will worship the Mahdi in his final victory in the coming global war. They want a world war. They're not going to stop. You can give them all the money you want. You can détente with them all you want. You can sit down in meetings all you want. It's never, ever going to happen. This is ingrained in their religious belief. So, if an all-out war between Israel and Iran erupts, it's probably inevitable that the Strait of Hormuz will be closed, and that will be catastrophic to the entire global economy. The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy said this past Tuesday that Iran, quote, could close the strait if deemed necessary. Just think about it. 1/5 of all the oil the world uses goes through the Strait of Hormuz. We are right now in uncharted territory. And we could soon see a level of panic in the financial marketplace that we have yet to see in a very, very long time. Things are definitely not good right now, but they will get a whole lot worse if a major regional war goes out and breaks out in the Middle East. It takes energy to make products, transport products, and sell products. The price of oil has an enormous impact on literally every sector of our entire country. If an apocalyptic war in the Middle East were to cause the price of oil to double, it would send us into a horrific economic tailspin. So let's hope for the best, but let's also prepare for the worst. Jesus said in the end times, there'll be wars and rumors of wars. Speaking of the economy, let's talk about that. there is a storm coming. Again, I'd like to give you really good news, but when you read prophecy and eschatology and you read biblical end times, that's not all good news. It's bad news before the great news comes. So listen to this one. Long predicted storm clouds in the economy may be here as inflation rises again. As we approach what is likely to be the most chaotic presidential election in U.S. history, troubling signs are starting to erupt in the U.S. economy. In fact, CNN, of all places, is actually admitting, quote, the long predicted storm clouds in the economy may actually be forming. But at this point, it's becoming extremely difficult for the mainstream media to avoid the truth. So what the media is telling us, what Biden's telling us, I'm going to just short circuit this one, put it in common language. They're telling us that inflation is going down. It's not going down. Let me give you an example. If in 2021, I gained 60 pounds, let's say that's my inflation rate, 60 pounds. And I gained that pounds and I kept it. And then in 2021, I gained 15 pounds. It would be wrong for me to tell you that, hey, I've only gained 15 pounds without understanding where I was before that. It's added inflation. It's not just inflation of 1 year. We are adding to the inflation that's already there. The Consumer Price Index, which is a key for inflation, rose 3.5 in March from a year ago. It's up 3.2% in February. The numbers that the government gives us are essentially meaningless at this point because they're only giving you the weight you gained this year. They're not telling you all the inflation that they've had before that. In order to get a realistic idea of how much prices are rising, we need to look at specific categories. Cost of energy is up 37% from where it was in 2021. Housing has become insanely expensive as well. The average monthly mortgage payment on a newly purchased home has approximately doubled since Joe Biden entered the White House. Doubled. That's ridiculous. The truth is that we are in the midst of the worst inflation crisis that any of us have ever seen or lived through. So don't let them gaslight you. The price of food is also going absolutely crazy. At one location in California, a 20-piece order of chicken McNuggets and 2 orders of large fries will set you back more than $25. Fast, cheap food, $25. Unfortunately, there are signs that things are going to get even worse. For example, and I'm not even talking about the oil in the Strait of Hormuz here. Small business optimism in the United States has dropped to the lowest level in 11 years. 99-cent only companies and shops will begin shuttering its hundreds of locations on this Friday, as the company moves towards total liquidation. Prior to the announcement, 99-cent only were operating 371 stores in the United States. Of course, we also learned about the Dollar Tree, Family Dollar. They'll be closing about 1,000 doors. And gold is skyrocketing, which is an indication. Building vast sums of money for Costco. Costco, yeah, they started to peddle gold. Where yellow metal sales began last year, they have turned into a cash cow for the big box company. In fact, sales are so brisk for gold at Costco that analysts at Wells Fargo expect revenue may now be running $100 million to $200 million a month, a rapid acceleration since gold bullion hit the warehouse club late in the summer of 2023. A tipping point has arrived, and the outlook for the months ahead is very bleak. The U.S. economy is going off the rails, and the worse things get, the more frustrated American people are going to become. Let's go a little bit further and tell you this under the side of war. Terror watches. Doesn't look like news gets any better on any front. Terrorists in the United States, the feds won't tell you about. This article writer says, I don't run my life and make decisions by fear. Neither should we. Neither do I ever want to frighten anyone. Neither do I. But I also don't believe in sticking our heads in the sand of denial and ignorance, being unprepared for possible disasters. Nor do I. This is a conspiracy. It's a proven fact. Infiltrators, enemies of the state terrorists, have already penetrated the United States southern border and are right now living among us and plotting evil against us, closer to your home and neighborhood than you might actually think. Since President Biden took office, there have been 7.5 million encounters nationwide and 6.2 million encounters at the southwest border, in addition to 1.7 million known gotaways. Encounters in the southwest border in the fiscal year 2023. 169 terrorists so far. We are watching things go absolutely wild. We've been hearing about the border, but we really don't know. There's a 72% increase of apprehended potential terrorists. 72% increase recently. At the end of 2023, the terrorist screening database contains the names of nearly 2 million people the government considers known or suspected terrorists, according to a CBS reporter's investigation. Most border encounters now involve people from other countries other than Mexico and the Northern Triangle of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. They're coming from India, Brazil, illegals, Canada, Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, China, over 8,000 illegals from China alone. And basically, the number has increased. Chinese national illegals entering the United States nationwide in 2021 was 23,471. Now that number has increased to 53,700. They're preparing for something nefarious. Something's going on. And again, Biden wants votes. He doesn't care about national security. He should be impeached just on that because he's putting us at national risk. Between October 2021 and October 23, shows the agents encountered 6,400 nationals from Afghanistan in a period of 3,000, as well as 3,153 from Egypt, 659 from Iran, 538 from Syria. This is not a left or a right issue. It's an American issue, and it must be overcome before our republic is dismantled and destroyed through this insane southern invasion. I'm not really sure what they're doing up in Washington other than sitting on their hands, but also the Republicans are to blame. They're allowing it. We know Biden's to blame, but they got to do something about this. It's a national threat. And why doesn't Mr. Biden close the southern border? Just as former President Trump built a wall and bolstered the border so he could, but tragically he won't. He's living in a pre-9/11 delusional mindset that thinks he can reason with terrorist funding regimes like the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now is the time to fight before we experience another massive terrorist disaster that will make 9/11 look like a trial run. Let's go a little bit further and go into religion and tell you some dire news there. This recent survey, dramatic rise in young women leaving the church. It used to be young men leaving the church. Now it's young women. And maybe it's not new, but the survey talks about the primary factors that are tied to the increase of women leaving the church were a rise in self-proclaimed feminism and self-identified liberals. And many women in this current climate find professional ambition and concern with personal success and growth will outweigh their desire to grow in areas of religion or familial concerns, describing the latter categories as low priorities. Second overreaching aspect is since 2015, the number of young women who identify as liberal has rapidly increased. Abortion and LGBT issues are actually playing a major role in why these women are leaving the church. We no longer live in a culture that privileges Christianity. There's nothing to be gained by identifying with the church. And so for someone to identify as a Christian, for them to go to church, it's because they're legitimate followers of Jesus. They're actual disciples, and they actually want to order their lives according to the teachings of the Bible. Now, this may sound strange coming from me, but I want you to know that. I think that the Lord is narrowing down his church. I think he's bringing the cream of the crop out. I think the people that are going to church religiously and love God are not going to be steered away by a culture. I think the ones steered away by a culture are the ones that were never committed to begin with. Despite how women in the survey felt about religion, Christianity actually elevates women, and it will be fruitful for the church to emphasize that more. It's Christians who have looked at men and women and taught that there's equality between the sexes. It's Christians who have elevated widows and orphans. It's Christians who have abolished things like slavery. And I think Christians need to do a better job in telling that story to show that it's not patriarchal and it's not misogynistic. Ultimately, if young women believe the lies of the culture, they will think the churches are not for them. And the culture has done a good job of peddling that message. Let me give you another dire news article that came out this week. Multiple global pestilences threaten to spiral completely out of control. I told you a little bit about this before, but do you remember the nightmares that we experienced in 2020 and 2021? Well, nobody wants to go through anything like that again. But right now, multiple pestilences are raging all over our planet. And one or more of them could actually potentially spiral completely out of control. Humanity's ability to manipulate diseases greatly exceeds humanity's ability to control diseases. Scientists all over the world are monkeying around with some of the most dangerous bugs that humanity has ever known. They should have thrown Fauci in prison a long time ago. When you take a deadly virus and you mutate it to be a deadlier virus, what's the purpose for that? Well, they're doing it all over the world. It's a recipe for disaster. And it's only a matter of time before it happens. Take, for example, what I've told you before, the bird flu. It has already killed hundreds of millions of birds around the globe. It's now infecting mammals. It's spread to mammals on a worldwide basis. Many new mammalian species have been infected. As long as it was just spreading around birds, H5N1 was not a major threat to humans. But now cattle all over the U.S. have been catching it. Cases have been confirmed in 21 herds in 7 different states. Now that H5N1 has jumped from birds to cows, will it jump from cows to humans? Well, it already has. One dairy worker in Texas has already been infected. The CDC of the state is telling them to prepare for more human cases of bird flu. Do they know something we don't? We need to keep a very close watch on this because H5N1 can have a death rate of over 50% in humans. Meanwhile, Mpox is back with a vengeance. Usually it hits in Africa. More than 4,500 cases, though, have been reported, 300 deaths so far this year. That's triple the number from most years. Here in the United States, the number of confirmed cases has doubled compared to the same period of last year. Mpox cases appear to be rising in the United States also. 656 cases in 2024 so far. It's truly a horrific disease. They say if you catch it, it's the worst pain you'll ever feel. Over 3.5 million cases in Brazil. This is dengue fever. 3.5 million cases in Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina so far in 2024. Barbados, Costa Rica, Guadalupe, Guatemala, Martinique, and Mexico have all seen surges, and also Brazil. While this is going on, the number of drugs that are in short supply in the U.S. has reached an all-time record high. Antibiotics. There are currently 323 medicines that are in short supply in America to fight some of these things. Multiple pestilences have already spread all over the planet, and more will inevitably erupt during the months and years that are in front of us. And Pastor Mark, that's pretty bad. Why are you saying that? Because Jesus said it. Matthew 24:7, last days. For nation shall rise against nation, we're watching it. And kingdom against kingdom, we're seeing it. There should be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So it's right down the line of what's going on. And lastly tonight, with everything happening in Israel, those of you who know I've been to Israel 50 times, and I have friends there that are like family. So I've been talking on the phone to them. I talked to one of my friends, he's a Hasidic Jew, Zev Berg. Mark Romish has actually helped support his work there in helping orphans and young girls, young boys, and just bringing the Old Testament to them and bringing them to the sites of Israel. But for the last 30 years we've been helping him. But I talked to him and I asked him, he lives in Tiberias, I said, what's going on there? What's it like? And he told me something very interesting. Again, you won't hear on the news, my last article in the news. He said, Pastor Mark, you won't believe it. He said, what happened when Iran threw all these rockets at us, he said, we saw them coming. He said, we saw all of them coming. He said, you know the Sea of Galilee, what you're seeing right there. You're seeing the Sea of Galilee and 2 F-35 Lightning combat jets over the Sea of Galilee. He said, the jets were deployed, he said, and all we kept hearing were these jets, they were flying really, really low to keep out of radar, because the Sea of Galilee is some 2,000 feet below sea level. And so they're flying really low. He said, as soon as the bombs came in and came over, those jets would rise up. He said, dozens of them would rise up and take those bombs out of the air, and we watched it. He said it was deafening. It was roaring all night. We saw those jets coming up and taking those bombs out of the air. He said, but the weird thing about it is that I have this really amazing peace that I have about me, and almost like a joy. He said, it sounds strange to say. He said, but I went into the streets of Tiberias right after this. He said, all the people there, Tiberias is a Jewish city, all Jews. He said, all of them there were happy and giddy and just really kind of talking. He said, what we believe and what the mindset on the street was is that God gave us a miracle. And they said they're excited because God gave them a miracle. Not one of these came through and did any damage. A little girl was injured a little bit, but that was it. And he said, we are believing that God had his hand in this. And he said, why have no one on the media talked about God? He said, because all over Tiberias, we are talking about the miracles of God and how he's preserving us. That's the real news today, and I wanted to share that with you. That's in the news. Get ready for